Hey, let's see. Hey, yes. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the stream. Yay, 2 viewers. And I'm still kind of bounced around on what exactly I want to show today on the stream. We'll kind of see, and so that's a really good opportunity for you all to jump in the chat and talk about if there's anything that you would like to see. But kind of here's the update. I think last Sunday, when did we stream last Sunday? We might have skipped last Sunday. Whatever the last Sunday was that we streamed, we still had the free trial of Ancestry.com. And now we don't. It has expired, and I didn't renew it. So on the last stream on Wednesday, we looked a little bit at what those differences were of what we were seeing. Thank you, Cranky. Stream hype. Ta-da! What we were seeing in the original view of our tree compared to what we see now. Oh, I did actually hit that button. And I wanted to understand kind of how much are we going to be hating life with a free Ancestry account as compared to a paid, because I've had a paid Ancestry account for almost as long as I've used Ancestry, like just forever. I went ahead and I probably stuck with it after the free trial, to be honest. So the question was, what are we going to get and what are we going to not get out of this experience? And we do kind of hate that. We kind of hate it. Not gonna lie, kind of hating it. It's very limited in terms of what we can see in the records, but I would say beyond that, the thing that I found on Wednesday that I hate the most about it being a free account is, let's take a look at, let's go ahead and take a look at Leonard here, is we can no longer, if we find a hint that we actually like this one, right? This is Leonard Shumway's birth record. We like that. The first thing we hate is that we can't see the details. So we learned on Wednesday that if we see this where it's not giving us this information, what it's trying to tell me is it knows those things. It's not going to tell me them without a paid account. And that's obviously frustrating. Excuse me. But the other problem is, even if I say I've found that record on another source and it's somewhere else, right? I could go find that Vermont index card, I'm pretty sure, out on Family Search. But even if I go find, let's say, the 1860 census, remember, we've talked about how that's publicly available information. 1850 and 1860 census records are public. They're owned by the National Archives, so we can get those. I could go to Family Search right now and get this record for Leonard and this record for Leonard. Here's my problem. I can't attach those to Leonard in my tree. If I hit yes here, it's going to prompt me to buy another membership. And so even if I go through and say, yes, Leonard is in the census, I can go add a residence fact. Let's close this. I can add the residence fact, and I can go look it up on Family Search and say he was living in Crawford County, Pennsylvania, because he was with, there's Crawford County, Pennsylvania. So I have this, and I can add that, and I can go 1850 census, but compare that to this, right? Here I have an actual link that says this fact is tied to this census record. And then I can open up the census record, and can I still see it? I actually can. I can still see, oh, nope, not great, right? I don't get the city. So I get a little bit of information about the things that I attached previously. I believe I cannot go see the census page. Nope, can't see the census page. So let's talk about how that compares to some of the other family tree experiences that are out there. So my point is, I kind of hate it because these 3 hints are going to sit here forever. I've actually already accepted, all 3 of them are valid. All 3 of them are legit for Leonard, right? They're all good for him. So that is his birth record. It matches what we know from the Shumway book. If we go in, we're going to find that that date matches the birth date that the book has for him. So we want to accept that. And normally in Ancestry, if you have a paid account, you accept a hint, it attaches to your tree, the little leafy thing goes away. And then if I can get him down to, hey, I'd actually like to accept these 3 hints so that they go away, this little 3 goes away. And then what happens that's important is if new things get found later and a new hint pops up for Leonard, I know it's new, right? I know there's something new there. I don't have to go through, I'm not going to memorize that he had 3 hints before, right? I'm not going to remember that number 3 next time and come back and say, oh, it used to be 3, now it's 4. That's not going to happen. If I can get this down to 0 and it goes from being 0 to being a hint at all, right? If I go back through this tree and I go, look, I know I cleared all the hints off of these people. So if a new leaf shows up, that tells me it's new information. That's important to me in managing, especially as my tree gets larger, which this tree's already gotten big enough that I've started to forget details about some of the people that are in it. Like I can't hold it all in my head anymore. And this is only 1/4 of my tree. It's only, you know, the teeny bit that I've started on 1/4 of my family tree, right? Because this is only my one grandfather's tree. So there's a couple of alternatives that we can look at that have pros and cons in terms of doing free research. I'll start by saying that the big differentiator between this and what we're going to go look at is that ancestry trees allow you to have total ownership over the tree that you're creating. It's yours. It behaves as if it were a program on your local machine. It just happens to be on the internet in the cloud so that you can access it, and you can share it with others. And in fact, Ancestry makes the default be that you're sharing your tree with others. If you want to, I actually do want to turn off the availability. So I'm going to go show you where to do that. So we go into our tree settings, we go to privacy. Right now this is set to a public tree, and that is Ancestry's default. I actually don't want that because this is just a little working tree. I'm going to make this one private, and I'm going to prevent it from being found in searches. I actually don't want it to come up as a hint on my real tree. So I'm going to go ahead and save that and make it private. So Ancestry makes it possible for a tree to be private. The other thing that I value about this, because I'm pretty particular about, as you've seen, right? Not a secret now. I'm pretty particular about how I do my research. And so I want to make sure that if there's stuff in here, I know where it came from. I put it there. I have my standards for whether I think a piece of data is good enough or not. And as I've said, to the point of being tiresome about it, I think I've been burned enough by having bad information in my tree that I try to be pretty conservative about what I add. Some days I get in a mood and I add some stuff and it ends up being wrong anyway and I have to tear it out. But I try to keep that to a minimum. So what I value is that this is my tree and I control who can edit it. I can actually share it with other people and give them edit permissions if I want to. Those are hand-picked people. But if I don't want to, I don't have to. I own this tree. I control all the data that's in it. I control the pictures. I control who can see the living people in it, right? I have a lot more fine-grained control. So an ancestry tree is basically mine. Mine. It means that anybody else who's a cousin on this side has their own tree that repeats a lot of this information. That's actually where a lot of those hints come from, is you get multiple trees with the same, with somebody that Ancestry recognizes as the same person. And it says, oh, well, they've got this anyway. So that's how that works. You end up with a lot of repeating. I suppose that means Ancestry must have a lot more storage, right? A lot more cloud disk space because they have to store multiple copies of every tree. And as you go further back, they must have thousands of some of these same people, right? That many Americans are descended from. So the other 2 sites that we're going to take a look at are different from that. Both of them are different in both of them have in common with each other that they are striving to be, I wish I could do 2 of these windows, but I haven't yet figured out how to do side by side on this. I will work on that. They both strive to be the single definitive family tree. So what that means, oh, that's not what I wanted to do. What that means is I don't have complete ownership over the data that's in the tree. I am sharing it with people. This is actually a terrific example. We can go straight to, there we go. We can go straight to LOL. Oh, hey, I actually know Ella Wilcox's death date. I can actually help with that. So here's a great example. I'm going to close this for a second and we'll take a look. Here in the family search tree, and family search is newer to the world of build your own tree. They've had stuff where you could build your own tree that was very different from this. And was clunky and hard to use. They've had a couple of different iterations of it over the years. And this is the latest one I think is really interesting because they are striving to be a single definitive shared family tree, meaning, for example, here, I did this, but like merging here is a thing. If in my private tree, if I accidentally create two records for the same person, I can merge them there. And that's in my private tree. But here, what's going to happen is you're going to have different individuals building out different trees. And they're going to have, because they're descended from the same person, they are going to have the same person in each of their trees. And so eventually you come together, you find that you've got the same person, and you can, this was my original Ella Wilcox that I created. And I have a cousin who had created, I don't know how she knows that Ella's name was Llewellyn. However, she's the one who had a photograph of Ella, and I didn't. So I'm going to say that she has at least a good chance of knowing that information is correct. Ella's a pretty recent relative. So her grandmother would have probably known, my cousin's grandmother would have probably known Ella when Ella was alive. So I'm willing to accept that, even though I haven't found any records that refer to her as Llewellyn. But that could absolutely be a thing, and then that she went by Ella her whole life. When I found my cousin's record, I was able to go in and say, let's merge these two. They are the same person. And of course, we do that by looking at the other facts and making a determination as to whether it's the same person. But now that we have merged them, anybody can come in here, anybody on Family Search can come in and edit this family, which could be great if, like my cousin, they know things about my family that I didn't know. That can be a fantastic source of more information. It's also a great place to go to collaborate because it's a little bit easier to share information here because it's shared this way automatically than it is to have to go do all your privacy and sharing settings on Ancestry, which are a little fussy. And if I go in and change, so it asked me to, it suggested that I might like to add a death date to Ella, which I would like to do. And so I can do that here. We hop over to my tree. I can go find the death date that I found for her. You will recall that that came from vital records from the state of New York. So we tracked that down and found that date in records. So we feel pretty confident about it. I can add that date here. It does a little bit of date standardization that's a little different from how I do it, which is fine. Like, I'm just trying to get the hang of how it does it, and then it's going to do Buffalo, Erie, New York. There we go. And then this, I could try to go find that record, but I'm not going to do that yet. I'll just put this in first. We know this. I might go ahead and say vital records. There we go. And when I save this, anybody else who's using this profile, anybody else who's interested in this profile or just browsing around, right, whether they're related to us or not, is going to see that I've made that change. So everybody gets that data. Same thing happens the other direction. If somebody else comes in here and adds a fact about Ella, I'm also going to see that fact. I don't know that I added very many of these facts. So again, that's good. That can be good. That can be bad. It's great if the data is right. It's not so great if they pump a lot of information in here that isn't right, or I don't know how they know and I can't figure out how they found out, right? But I can also contact people. There we go. Okay, good. That is standardized. I can contact people and ask them. Like, there's a lot of stuff that you can do that's kind of different from how you do it on Ancestry. So we've updated a tree here. I can go view a tree view of her family. Right, and so the layout is a little different. Can I flip it? Yes, yes, I can. I can flip it this way. They have a couple more views, but like this is similar, right? This is comparable to the view that I was looking at. Here we have very similar. Uh, there's my Harry Harvard Hammond. There's his sister Mabel McKenna. There's Cora and Charlie, the babies who passed away in infancy and have got their dates there. There's Irving. That's my cousin's ancestor. And then she's filled in details. Remember that in my tree, I didn't bother to put Irving's wife because love my cousin, not interested in researching the history of the Sherwood family. They're not related to me. So that is one of the things that you'll get here is that you will have all of those siblings and spouses and so forth are going to be in here because the idea is we only want one copy of Irving Eugene Hammond in the world. We only want one copy of him on this giant family tree. And so the Sherwood family can come and use this profile just as easily as I can, and then they can also do their Sherwood research, which I can ignore. And that's fine. In my private tree that I own, I'm not interested in having the Sherwood family there. It doesn't do anything for me. But of course, it's great to have it here because that's something that the shared family are going to be able to use. Let's take a look at this. I honestly have not explored all that much about working in Family Search, and I'm curious. Missing standardized birthplace. I wonder if... Okay, well, fine. Yes. What if I wanted to go fix it? Okay. In Rome, New York. Really? No. No, she wasn't. No. She wasn't born in New York. I don't think she was born in New York. Let's go look. We haven't built out Rachel Russell in this tree yet, so we may not actually know that. Okay, we don't know that. I don't think she okay. I'm going to ignore that cuz I'm not doing that right now. We don't actually have a whole lot on Rachel Russell Shumway, but that's a branch of the tree that we talked about a couple months ago now. Okay. So here we have yeah, I mean, maybe, but no, I don't think so. Okay. Actually, I don't think that's right at all. Fine. Let's go to her record. And so this is where, I don't know where this came from. If I went to edit, would I be able to find out? Unknown user. See all changes. How'd that get in there? Who put that in there? How'd that get in there? Don't know. And then I got to actually be thoughtful about somebody put that in there. I don't think it's right, but I also don't have anything to replace it with. It's kind of being I'd be kind of a jerk to just go in and delete it. I think I would. I would feel more confident about changing it if I knew what the real information was, if I knew what the real birth information was, and I could put it in there and have a source. That would be great. I do not have that. Let's go back to the tree. So we're going to leave Rachel Russell alone. See, that was just kind of we chased a squirrel there, and it wasn't helpful. Okay, so we're going to go back, all the way back to the tree. And then let's talk about how this is similar to and different from the experience that you're going to have over on Wiki Tree. So what we've emphasized in talking about this family search tree experience, and this is the one that I am the least familiar with. This is a shared tree with everybody, but it does have access to all the source records that exist on Family Search. If we go look at the whole body of source records, I think Family Search actually has more than Ancestry, probably a lot more than Ancestry. But, and all for pretty much all for free. But we discovered on Wednesday, and we'll probably find more of this as we plug along. Let's go ahead and do this with Llewellyn here, with Ella. The problem on Family Search that we have found so far is that it's it is more difficult to find those records here than it is in Ancestry. They are much less discoverable. They are much harder to track down. I will say this. Okay, so this one, so we just did, I've actually never done this before. We just went ahead and did a search all records on Family Search for Llewellyn Wilcox, for Ella Wilcox. And what we found, the first one that came up is actually quite a good match. And I know from my other research that this is her. This is our Ella Wilcox. So we can add, view the attached tree person, view the record details, view the image. So if I go through here, what do I do? What I would like to do. Oh yeah, all right, fine. So we've got this. Is it attached? Okay. Is it already attached? I guess it's already attached. Well, that's not helpful. Okay. I mean, sure, great. Great, great. That's helpful. Does she already have the 1860 census? She sure does. It's right here. Okay. Ancestry has this tiny little feature where if you already have the record, it shows it differently so that you know not to go click through it and you're not adding something new. I officially missed that feature. Okay. Right. So, oh, interesting. Right. One of the things that we want to watch out for is that, yes, and then this is her. Is that Ella Wilcox, that's her maiden name. It's not her married name. So if I find somebody who, alternate first name, alternate last name, I actually want, it's not searching with her married name, Hammond. It's only searching with her maiden name. Okay, good to know. If I find somebody who is listed as Ella Wilcox and is a wife of someone named Wilcox, I actually know that's not mine because she didn't marry somebody named Wilcox. She married somebody named Hammond. So this is not her. This is Ella something else, right? Her birth name. This woman's birth name was something completely different. So she's anywhere where it says a wife, I know, and named Ella Wilcox, I know that's not her. This one I don't know about. But I have other reasons to know that that's not her. That's another wife. That's another wife. Mother-in-law. But as we scroll down here, we get back into Wisconsin. I happen to know that this one is also her. But this one, but look, this one is a big deal. Now, is this one already attached on the tree? Might be. View attached tree person. So yes, this one is already attached on the tree. I think that's what this means. View attached tree person. Yeah. So it's already attached to this person. Great. We already have that. That's her marriage record. We don't have that over on Ancestry. So that's useful, right? And this is solid content because it tells us her husband is Eugene Hammond. Her father is Chester Wilcox. So that's cool. That's extremely good. So we have that's already attached. This record up above is not already attached. And I think we're going to hold off on that because I don't want to just take the shortcut and say, I already know. I do already know. But getting to how I already knew was a lot of work. And I want to show you how that worked at some point. So, this is okay. I can go through and I can show some more results and scroll down and I figure out what neither one of them does that would be really cool is it'd be really cool to be able to just take any record and mark it as this is not my person. That would be super cool. I do not have that. And you will notice in here that I'm still not getting anything back on Ella Hammond. On Ancestry, it automatically plugs in her married name as an alternate name. Looks to me like I'm going to have to do that by hand on Family Search. It's not the worst thing. And there's Ella H. Hammond, already attached. Okay, so this symbol is telling me that it's already attached to somebody in a tree. So that's useful. And look at here. We have, these are some of the records we looked at previously over on Ancestry. So we have her living in Buffalo with Adelbert E., also known as Eugene Adelbert or Eugene A. This is all the stuff we knew from Ancestry. Here we have, in Buffalo with Mabel and Harry. We knew that. Daughter-in-law, living with Honeywell and Emily and Eugene, right? And all of these are already attached to this tree. So great, go us. There isn't a way for me, is there a way for me to mark this record if I want to save it for later? Okay, so notice, this is the one that I said was not already attached to the tree. I happen to know that this is our Ella. I don't have a way to save it and come back to it. So in all likelihood, I will forget to do that. Fine. Okay. So that's kind of a quick overview of the family search experience. It's not bad. If you do just a vanilla search on Ancestry, it's pretty similar in terms of just, it's going to dump a lot of records, a lot of which are not your ancestor. This one shows a little bit more detail in the list to determine whether it's your ancestor or not, which is lovely. I think, can I sort? I don't think I can sort here. Let's look at the collections because I actually want to see if I can find the New York death index, which I don't remember whether Family Search has that. Okay, so birth, marriage, and death. I want to show all of these. New York City municipal deaths, that's not what I want. New York City births doesn't help me. New York State death index. Let's look at that because that was where we originally found her death record. What I'd love to be able to do is link. Yes, here it is. That's Ella. And it maybe didn't come up because it was spelled funny. And there's no tree here. It means it's not currently linked to anybody. And I'd like to connect that to her death because I didn't have a source when I added that death date to the tree. Remember, I had to type it in. So let's review and attach this record. We know this is the record because earlier we found it on Ancestry, so we know this is the right record. There's other stuff goes along with it that we know. And in fact, this was the one where Ella and her husband Eugene are literally on the same page. So we're gonna add reason to attach source. It's the same person. Okay. This matches Ella's name, Census Records, city directory records. We didn't talk about the city directory, but it's a thing. And probate in Buffalo. And her husband, Gene, is on the same index page. Attach. And now, what does that do? I am not sure. It looks like we are done. Let's go look. Hello. Let's go look and see if that's a source for her death now. Yes! So I do like that, right? Her death now has a source listed. And it's tagged to that fact, which I like. And now I know, right? So I don't just have a bunch of facts and a bunch of sources and I don't know how they connect. I have both. I like that a lot. Okay. So we now have, and what I like is for the facts that are in here, I can say, how did I know that? Right? How did I know that thing? And I can go to it. Cool. So we have that. The question is that actually a clunky experience or am I just not used to it? If I got used to it, if I spent as much time in here as I have in Ancestry over all the years, there's a decent chance that I would get better at it, right? That's cool. We could go do the same thing for Eugene and build that out. And again, kind of the benefit here is that this is where I think linking facts and sources together really tightly is the reason I think that's important, even more important on a shared family tree, is that I would like the other people who come along who want to collaborate on this record, I would like them to be able to see where I got my information from. Because I might remember, right? In this case, I came to Ella and I'm like, oh, yeah. I remember the whole saga of trying to find her in the New York Death Index. And for me, for my research, that literally took me some years. So that's stuck in my memory. Like I know that that's a thing that I found and I know how I found it and all that. But for somebody who's just coming along, or this person is maybe not as direct in their line, in their pedigree as Ella is for me, it's nice for them to be able to see where that came from and keep it all straight. Okay, so that's a quick tour of Family Search. We can now do a quick tour. I'm going to go ahead and use my real account on, I wonder what my password is on Wiki. Yeah, okay. Fine. Maybe I have a good password on Wikitree. I sure do. All right, fine. Give me a moment. Gonna go find my good password. There it is. In real life, I use a password manager. So there we are. Okay, so what that's going to get us, let's go up to Mr. Harry Hammond here. There's Harry. And here's Ella. So here is the Wiki Tree experience. I did a quick bounce there because what I'll try to be careful of is on my profile on Wikitree, I have access to the records of the profiles of some living people who are closely related to me. And I'm going to do my best to not have those broadcast on the internet. So here we are. Because if you, as a regular user, go to Wikitree and you're not in my trusted list or the trusted list for those living people, then you won't be able to see as much detail as what I can with my login. I could go create an alt login so that you could, so we could all see that privacy stuff together. I may, if I want to spend if we decide later that we want to spend a lot of time over here, haven't committed to that yet. So here we are on Wikitree, and Wikitree, I've spent a lot more time here than I have on Family Search, so I'm a lot more familiar with it. And let's go on up the Eugene line because, yes, see, I've done a lot more with Eugene. Presumably, you're all at least familiar with the concept of Wikipedia. All right, so Wikipedia meant to be a giant shared encyclopedia of that anyone can edit, and it uses a particular type of it's a particular type of website that's editable in a particular type of way. And Wiki Tree, the idea is that it is a shared family tree. It is seeking to be the single definitive tree of all persons and how all persons are connected. The people who founded Wikitree believe in that as a principle. So they've done a lot of stuff to support that idea of one single shared collaborative family tree. And my learning of how to deal with a tree like that, I learned all of my habits about shared trees here on Wikitree, which I think is a good thing. It's a really good community. There's a lot more support here built in from the beginning, because that was the intent from the beginning, was that it be collaborative and shared. There's a lot more features built in to collaborate, and it uses the same technical platform. It uses a lot of similar technology as what you use to run a Wikipedia. So I actually used to be an editor on Wikipedia back in the day. Anybody can edit, but like I actually made a practice of going through pages and editing and updating it and adding information to it for a while. It was a little, I have weird hobbies. What can I say? But because of that, I was familiar with the process of like how a wiki is managed. And this one therefore had some familiarity to me in terms of how that worked. And there are some things about it that on the collaborative side, I think it's a lot stronger. The other thing that's absolutely beautiful that I think a lot of people researching their family really appreciate is that there's just a wide open text box with some formatting capabilities where you can write a biography of your ancestor. And a lot of people really want the stories. And something that you will notice in an ancestry, in this family, let's go family view of Eugene here, is we can't really tell his story. Yeah, they have a thing that's called a life story. That's not what that's for. Yes, they have some stuff that's notes, but look how hidden those are, right? I could write a whole biography in here, but they're only viewed by the owner and other editors, and they're harder to find, and it's not really front and center saying, hey, you know what? Eugene Hammond was a person, and he did stuff. And if this was my grandmother, let's say I wanted to talk about my grandmother, she had a really interesting life. Some of it's in her obituary, but a lot of it is stuff that just her kids and her descendants know about, right? And her friends and so forth. You can't really express the fullness of this was a person and the life they had. And on Ancestry, when you go find other people's trees, you will see a lot of people on Ancestry have tried to kind of bolt on things like attaching lots of pictures of maps and photographs and adding their family crest that we've talked about on a prior stream, and trying to make this page a little more colorful and putting in a portrait like we did for Ella. But all of that together is still very, very clunky in terms of finding, I can look at this and see a set of facts that tells me some things about their life. But for example, I don't know, something we don't know from looking on Ancestry about Eugene is a family story. The family story was that you will know Eugene was born in Western Pennsylvania, where he was living, where his parents were living, and Honeywell was a boatman on the canal in far Western Pennsylvania in 1855. The family migrated out to Iowa and became farmers. His baby children, Cora and Charlie, died in a diphtheria epidemic in 1883, within about a week of each other, which is super sad. And they are buried in the cemetery there. His Eugene's uncle lived in the same county and also had a family, so they probably had cousins nearby. And then, and he marries Ella, great, and they have these children. They ended up, Cora and Charlie died. They had 2 more children, great. One of those is my grandfather, that's awesome. And then, for some reason, right, in 1900, and I've commented on this before, it's not super common for those of us whose families moved west. It's not super common for families to go west and then move back east. It does happen. There's another one of my Rabine cousins on my mom's side that also moved from Wisconsin back to upstate New York. But it's not what you think of as a typical migration pattern. So I think, wow, this thing where he's in Iowa in 1885 and then we find him in Buffalo in 1900 is really interesting. And we still don't know exactly when his parents died. And it would be lovely to have that whole story. The family story that I wanted to talk about was that Eugene, the family says that Eugene inherited, um, we don't know from whom or upon the death of who, but inherited a boarding house in the city of Buffalo. I still have not figured out who he inherited it from, but he inherited a boarding house that needed to be run. And so I tell myself this story of he's a farmer in Iowa. That's most of what he's known his whole life because he's been in Iowa since at least the age of 5. So he's always been a farmer in not just Iowa, but like really rural, even more rural Iowa. He's a farmer out in the country in Iowa. He gets an inheritance to run a boarding house in a city in upstate New York, like in an urban area in upstate New York. And he and Ella and Harry pick up and move back to Buffalo. I think Mabel goes with them, but now I don't remember. I think Mabel is still at the age that she would go with them. Can't remember if she stayed and got married or if she went with them. I think she went with them. So they go back to, but there's nowhere to put, he inherited a boarding house, right? We had a guess about something borders because in this, oh, we don't have that one. We can't see that one. In one of these census records, which we can't see anymore, there were a bunch of borders, a bunch of non-related people living in the household with Eugene, and that supported the idea that this was a boarding house. But there's not really anywhere to put this. And if I try to put it in the description of a particular fact, like here, hey, he's got a bunch of boarders living in his house with him in 1905, the description is really limited in the number of characters I can add there. So I have to abbreviate a bunch of stuff and cram it in. So none of this is a story. Wiki Tree is almost exactly the opposite of that. What you are trading here is you have almost an unlimited biography that can be written. And you can write it however you want. It is free text. If I go in here and edit Eugene here, I scroll down, this is the biography, and I can keep going. I can keep writing as much as I want. There are some formatting things that come over from Wikipedia that allow you to do headings, add sources, link out to other people or web pages, italics, bold, underline, block quotes, a couple of things. It's not super rich. You can't make it look quite like a Word doc without doing a bunch of stuff to it. But you have a little bit of formatting that you can do. And again, you can just keep writing as much as you want. You can put subheadings in here to talk about the births, list of children, lots of stuff that's very commonly done. We could actually go look at maybe we want to go look at one of the notable profiles, right? So profile of the week. Remember, this is a shared family tree, so we can go anywhere. Oh yeah, I totally want to look at Beverly Cleary. Oh yes, I do. That's my age group, right? So here's an example of what you can do with a profile. You've got a lovely profile photo. There's other images that can be added. That's pretty neat. The images, I think, are not, it's not very smooth, but you can do it. You can add little tags here that say interesting facts. These are provided by certain research projects. There is a notables research project that helps coordinate the work on famous individuals. And then we have this long biography here, decent long biography, a little bit of sourcing, and then we've got links out to all the sources that are used in the biography, which could be vital records and genealogical sources, or it could be other articles, right? So this is like a link to her author's website. So, and there's comments and you can discuss and so forth. So this is a decent looking profile. There are fancier ones. We could go look at, let's see, are there some notable categories? Honestly, I don't spend a ton of time doing these things, but why don't we do the obvious one, which would be George Washington. We'll search for George Washington. There are a lot of George Washingtons. You would think they could put the famous one up to the top. There we go, U.S. President's Project. Okay, so there's President George Washington. Let's take a look. Fancy, fancy, right? And so there's more wiki features that are here. So managed by the U.S. President's Project. Talks about the, right, we've got, this is very traditional thing that you might see on Wikipedia, where you have somebody who's in a line of succession. So they've duplicated that here. That's lovely. Right, you've got these little flags out here that talk about his Revolutionary War service and considered founding father, and lots of subheadings, right? Lots of biography here on this person. Now, for somebody who's famous and notable and has lots of books written about them, obviously we don't need all of that biography here. We could just link out to any number of things that are about him. But what you can imagine is that if you're writing something about your family member, that you can really put a lot of that color and detail about a person that you care about, right? So that to me is really beneficial. I like that. If we go here now, we'll go back to, going back to Eugene. So I consider that really great. Another thing that's really great is the ability to collaborate specifically within projects about types of things. So if we go look at my badges, you will see that I have joined on Wikitree a thing called the Germany Project, because I have descent from Germany mostly on my mother's side, and Poland mostly on my mother's side. And that allows me to connect with other people not related to me, but who are doing research in Poland. We'll talk a little bit someday about, I've had some extraordinary discoveries from people that aren't even related to me that are from Poland who said, oh, by the way, there's a resource, new resource just came online with Polish records, and I found important records about Polish members of my family. We have the Puritan Great Migration Project. I talked about that, I want to say last stream, maybe a couple streams before. The Puritan Great Migration from England to New England, between the Mayflower and about 1650. I have tons of relatives, most of them on this Hammond line, who trace their descent back to someone who came over in the Puritan Great Migration. This was the first project I got deeply involved in on Wikitree. And the people working on PGM are people who are also familiar with that particular migration, that time period, the records available in New England at that time in history, and methods that you can use to do research. And it rocketed my ability to be a researcher. All the things I learned from some of the amazing members of that project. And the membership kind of comes and goes. I'm not active in it right now because I've been busy with other things. I dabble a little bit if I find something new on one of mine, but I used to actually go through and contribute to profiles in the PGM that weren't related to me because I had learned enough about how to do it that I could help clean them up and make sure that they were linked to proper sources. Excuse me. I was a member and a leader on the Magna Carta project. I have one line, it is on this Hammond line that goes back, that can be documented to going back to the Emperor Charlemagne, which is pretty cool, and to the signers of the Magna Carta. That's one of those fun genealogy tricks that if you can document your line from there, it's really entertaining to do. And I am a project member of DNA. I haven't actually done a whole lot with the DNA project. And any other projects? I think just those. I really like being involved in projects, but there are projects for all kinds of interest areas. If we go to find projects, if you are zeroed in on something that relates to your family, you can really literally find cousins, right? So you've got a lot of projects relating to geography. I have friends and step family who are descended from settlers in the New Netherlands, New Amsterdam, New York, New Jersey area that was settled by migrants from the Netherlands. And there's a lot of researching New Netherlands is way different from researching New England. Learning those techniques, and that project is really helpful for that. I have another friend I've helped do some research who is descended from folks from New Sweden, the New Sweden settlement, which was also in on the boundary between Pennsylvania and Delaware. Swedish settlers were there, and again, there a little bit of overlap between techniques for Netherlands and techniques for Sweden. But the projects there, this one is a project for Sweden itself. If you have ancestors you can document back to Sweden, man, working through Swedish records is so interesting. And dealing with the way Swedish names were done prior to the 1800s makes it really challenging. So knowing how to tease apart the people who were the people who shared similar names in that area, that's pretty cool. Under United States projects, there are a number of sub-projects. So New Sweden is a project. So there's one for westward migration. Black Americans is a really important project. I've talked a little bit about, not on my Hammond line, but on my grandmother's line. I do go back into some southern U.S. white families who owned enslaved people. And so I have also tried to do a little bit of documentation of what can I find from my ancestors' records that would shed any light on the lives of the enslaved people that served them, that were, that worked with them and were owned by them. Sorry, I'm not trying to whitewash that. And can I make any of that information available for the potential descendants of those enslaved people to be able to learn more about their families and where they came from? And I think that's kind of a responsibility. Those of us who have slave owners in our families can use our skills to provide a lot more information. And there's some really cool, this project is one of the ways, but there's some other things online about how you can share that information with the people who may want or need it. And there's a lot of other projects that are very particular to certain interests. So I mentioned New Netherlands. We talked about under United States. There's a New Sweden project. Clearly, there's Jewish roots. Jewish ancestry research is quite different. I have just scratched the surface of that one. There are name studies. So if you have a surname that you are trying to study, there actually is a Smith name study. And I would imagine they do a lot of work trying to tease apart all the Smiths because it's such a common name. Early Pennsylvania settlers, right? So there's a lot of areas of potential interest that might have to do with, Quebecois is something that I have worked on. I've done stuff for a cousin on his mother's side. He's descended from French Canadian and learning how to research. That was super cool. And then if you get into the culture of Wikitree, there's other stuff that you can do to just help make Wikitree in general a better, more useful place for the people who come to it that has nothing to do with your own particular family. And there are even projects with people who look for profiles that don't have anybody managing them. We have no idea who they are, and you just volunteer and help make those profiles better. The idea being that we are trying to create one giant shared family tree. And so pitching in and helping on all the branches, not just your own, is a nice thing to do if you are interested. So I've dabbled with it a little bit. At the moment, I'm spending more of my time focused on my family and branches of other people's trees that I have researched. But there's a ton of opportunity. Let's talk about what the trade-off is. Because when we're talking about strictly researching our own families, um, the thing that I find challenging is I kind of hate this family listing. The way that it's laid out is really, I find it really hard to read. I know what they're trying to do is save space. I find this kind of, I'd love to see that in a list format, but it's not. There is a family tree view. This is kind of awful, honestly. It's not good. All right, it's not nice looking. It's hard to read. You can work with it, but it's kind of terrible. I will give them this. I love the pop-ups are very nice, and they've done a lot of work to make these pop-ups a lot more useful. You can see where this one says it's managed by me. A lot of this is stuff that I myself have put in. So managed by me. If it says managed by me, chances are I created this profile. And that just means I'm the first of all my many cousins to get here. I got here early. And I've been plugging people in. So we've got this. It's not nearly as nice. It's not nearly as easy to navigate, right? You don't have the lovely drag and drop and stuff. Because pictures on here are hard to work with, a lot of these are just never going to have a profile picture. Hey, here's that data about Rachel Russell. Remember, I was kind of ranting about her over on Family Search. So it looks like I do have that data here. Let's go look. Let's go see how we know. Here's the thing I particularly don't like. There is not a way, kind of almost at all, right? It's really difficult to link a source. I have sources here. It's really easy for people to create profiles with absolutely no sources. I do have sources listed. Well, okay, there's a little prompt. When you create a brand new profile, it will tell you you are required to add at least one source. The problem is you can type anything into that box. And so people will type in there, I will add a source later. And then 5 years later, I come in and they haven't done it because of course not. That's how I would do it too. So I have sources listed here and I tried to make them such that you could find, if someone else was coming in, that you could find this. And figure out what source I was talking about. So I at least have them listed and I tried to make them findable. When I'm in a hurry, I'm not as diligent about that and I might just say Vermont Vital Records and nothing else. If I do that, it's not super helpful because I'm not giving the next person enough breadcrumbs to actually find that record. So this one, I'm going to pat myself on the back. I did a decent job here. Of course, the thing that drives me nuts about this on Wikitree, and this has to do, I think, with the fact that Wikitree was built as a wiki first and then as a family tree and not the other way around, is that there is not a way to link a specific source to a specific fact unless I write it in the bio and create a footnote. So let's see if I can find somebody that I've done that with. Because here you'll notice I haven't done that. Oh, see, here's a good example. I just quick and dirty just plugged in all these censuses. And this is to remind me, yes, she's in that census. But you'll notice it doesn't say, I didn't write a bio. It doesn't say anything about where. It's not a link to that record. The clue there is that it's Iowa. But there's very little going on here. Oh, yeah, and we do actually have a death record. Oh, we have a death record for Emily. Did I put that in my ancestry tree? I sure didn't. Well, fine, let's go do that while we're here. So here we have, this might be from that Works Progress Administration thing. Iowa deaths and burials. Oh, well, no, I don't want to do that. I want to actually look at the record. There's no image available. Okay, so this is it. This is the record. Okay. So this is Emily Hammond's death record. She's age 88. She's widowed. She's in Beaver Township. We know this is her because we know there are so few Hammonds living in Butler County, Iowa. And everything else matches, right? Birth year matches. That's from the Shumway book. Her birthplace is Vermont. That matches. She died in New Hartford, which is where we know they lived. It says here that she's buried in Oak Hill Cemetery. That's the same cemetery that Cora and Charlie and Lewis and Mary are all buried that my aunt visited. But it doesn't say, but we did not encounter. So her stone may not survive there, right? Or it just may not have been documented. But it does say that she's buried, and it does say here. So I am interested to know what this source is, because I'm curious whether that's sourced from real records or from people. I don't know if that's going to open or not. Okay. Partial collection. What is in this collection? It's index. Oh, interesting. It's from the IGI. There is a decent chance that this may have come from people's trees rather than, right? Super rural Iowa may not have recorded all of this stuff, right? There may not be a definitive record. So I don't know. Okay, it's fine. It's fine. It's good enough, right? It is possible that this came from somebody else's tree. But it is pretty specific, and hopefully it matches. Hopefully it's true. So, and remember, this kind of goes along with that narrative of, hey, oh, hey, she dies in Iowa in 1899, and then by the middle of 1900, her son Eugene and his family are living in Buffalo. Had been living with her, now living in Buffalo. So I think that part is pretty interesting. We've got that fact in there now. But I digress. Back to Emily on Wikitree. The only reason we got to that because, oh yeah, here we are. There's Emily Shumway. We have her birth in Vermont. And so I added that source, and oh look, here it is on Family Search. Remember, we just bounced over. You will have to browse. Yikes. See, so attached to multiple people. That's a duplicate record. Those people are duplicates. Oh, we could go resolve that. That's a great example of we just found some duplicates. Is that going to open up in a new tree? On a new tab? No. Okay, fine. Possible duplicates. Let's go look. Record hint. Yes. Okay. Yes. Fine. All right. Let's come back to this because I've bounced a bit, and that's not what I intended to do. Okay. Let's go back to Wikitree and take a look. But on Wikitree, you can see that I put some stuff that I knew from other sources. I had, in fact, both of these records came to us from Family Search. They are linked here, and you can see that I was able to do the link in such a way that I can actually click on it, and it takes me over to Family Search to look at the actual record, which we like. I didn't link to the book that way, but we could. And in fact, if I go do a search, there's an interesting thing that people have just started doing. Well, no, that I've just started doing over on Wikitree, which is, I want to go do an advanced search. So if I scroll down to the bottom here, Shumway family. Nope, that's not what I wanted. Shumway genealogy, there we go. Shumway. Okay, fine. That's not what I wanted. What I want is to search this title here. See if that book has its own page. thought that book had its own page, but it must not. Some of the books on Wikitree have pages, and then you can link out to a copy of the book, right? Because the Shumway Family Book is one of the ones that we found in our free book search. So we know it exists out on archive.org. And I haven't linked to, I could link to this page on archive.org, and then you'd be able to go right there. The thing here is you have to rely on the people who write biographies to do all this work. And so I did a little bit of it when I set this biography up. But if you are also descended from Emily Shumway, Hammond, and you came to this page, you can see where, if this was the first time you'd ever thought about this, you don't really have all of the information that I have about Emily, because honestly, most of what I have on Emily is over on Ancestry, where I've done most of my research. So over time, I've been trying to gradually move some stuff to Wikitree, in part because I want to share, right? I want to be able to gather it all together and tell the story. A lot of those stories are in my head, and also because I want to share and potentially connect with other cousins, because I've had a number of great little connections off of Wikitree, including potentially a cousin on the Hammond side that we may have visiting the stream in the future. So, hey, hi, Left Control Key. Good to see you. Thanks for being here. So, we're at the halfway mark of the stream. We've been looking at free alternatives to sadface. Our Ancestry.com free trial expired. And the experience of doing research on Ancestry is pretty frustrating without the paid membership. There's a lot of things that Ancestry is particularly good at, but only if you pay for their service. So we're looking around to say, well, what alternatives do we have that would help us not just do our research, but also manage our research and keep track of what we've learned in a useful way. And there are so here on Wikitree, big strength of Wikitree is that it's a shared tree. You will, as you work your way back in the tree, you will encounter, let's go ahead and look. You will encounter cousins who share descent from these individuals. Let's see if we do on the Shumway line. We actually don't. Watch. Oh, yeah. If we go to Mary Dana here. Ta-da. Okay. Nobody owns this one. Maybe I should adopt it. So this was originally created by somebody else. We go up here and find Joseph Dana. We haven't researched these folks on stream yet, but which is useful, right? We can say, hey, we've already linked into this whole Dana family. No profile manager. Here we go. So we get back to like here. We find Joseph Dana. Richard Dana, I think, is the original. Yep, the original immigrant ancestor. Remember that I mentioned the Puritan Great Migration is a thing. So I just traced up maternal and paternal lines until I found somebody here. This is actually managed by the Puritan Great Migration Project and a number of other private folks. I am not a manager of this profile. I probably did not write this profile, in part because it would look nicer if I had written it. But let me give a lot of credit to the people who wrote this. They did the thing that you have to be good at doing in order to really get this to link facts to sources. And so what we have is that they are using the Wikitree footnote feature to say this, it doesn't have a tooltip. Okay. This fact here, this sentence, baptized in Manchester, son of Robert, and we can go say, really? How do they know that? And we go here and we've got, okay, there's a Manchester birth record. Fine. It's an archive. Okay, great. And so what we have is name Richard Dana, type baptism, there's the date, there's the church, the parish, father's name, and then it says archive roll. So that's kind of a hint. I'm going to have to dig quite a bit to go find that record. I am curious about some of the other sources for this individual, because genealogical. See, now this is nice. Genealogical and family history of the state of New Hampshire. Aha! Which is a book page. So somebody has created a page representing the book. This is a lovely page. This is really nicely done. They're using there's kind of a standard template that folks are encouraged to use when they're when they're creating book pages. And I've been trying to add some of the books that we found that are for my family. And this takes us out to Google.com is probably free. Archive.org is almost always free. HathiTrust might be free. And so these are going to might be free and readable. Like the whole thing might be able to be fully readable, which would be really exciting. Yep. I love that they have a section. I've actually not seen that before for errors, because we're going to talk about that with some of those Hammond books. When we get back to my original Hammond ancestor, there are 2 full books written with very detailed descriptions of whose parents were and where they came from that are completely bogus, totally wrong, absolutely wrong. I have written a big screed on that at Wiki Tree. If you search Wiki Tree, you will find it if you're interested. But you'll get to hear the screed on the stream because nobody escapes. But the books are totally wrong, and that is frustrating because I was relying on those for a lot of years because it's a book, right? But this is why, like, where does the book get its facts? And I had to do kind of a, when things weren't really panning out, I kind of had to unpack those facts and figure them out. So having a place to describe the errors. But this is nice because it does take us to a link for the book. What I do think is nice to be able to do when we can is to also, did they do it? I think they did. Is it in the reference? They link to the actual page that this actual person, right? So that book page is for everybody who's in that book. This is for the actual Dana family. That's pretty cool, right? Family was founded in America by Richard Dana, who was, according to tradition, born in France. He wasn't born in France. He was born in Manchester, probably. Probably. Now I'm curious. All right. So I would say this is pretty not bad, right? It's got a lot of, it's got links to all of the records documenting all of Richard Dana's children. And these are done up in the Family Search citation format, which is pretty informative and absolutely gives you enough to go on. We can go click through to Family Search and see. We would have to go browse the whole film to find the original record, but they've indexed it. That's not bad. Not bad. It's an example of how Family Search is not quite as refined. Now, let's look at it again. It's not quite as refined an experience as what we had over on Ancestry. Right? Family Search has, on Ancestry, we also had the indexed version, right? Somebody typed this stuff out, transcribed the record, and has the facts kind of broken out nicely. So we have that here too. On Ancestry, they typically will display the page where that record came from in the same place. And on Family Search, if they have it, they will. If they have the precise image, we saw that a couple times earlier today, they will. But in this case, what they're saying is it's in here somewhere. It's this huge record collection. It's in there somewhere. Good luck. We found on Ancestry, it was mildly difficult when it was just throwing you onto the page and saying, good luck finding them on this page, and we would scan around. They had some cool tools to zero in on the one that was on the page. This is the whole book. And they're saying, good luck with that. So that's challenging. A good example of where that's really difficult is in the Antipas Hammond family. We had there are records in Rochester, Massachusetts that show that Antipas and his siblings were baptized, but it doesn't record their birth. And sometimes it gets transcribed as if that was their birth date, even though it wasn't. It was their baptism date. And it wasn't until we actually went in and found a more contemporaneous transcript of it that we found, oh, it's not B and then the date, it's BP and then the date. And that was how we knew it was a baptism. So Digging all the way in and finding the original source record can be important because it can expose that there are issues with the way it was transcribed, but we don't know that if we can't find it, and this one is a little bit harder to find. All of that to say, Family Search is still behind on indexing and on linking specific records to specific pages and sections of pages. They have that's partly a function of the fact that they have so many more records than Ancestry, and probably also that all their transcribing is being done probably mostly by volunteers. I don't know how Ancestry does theirs, but I have to assume that to be able to do as many as they have in as short a time as they have, they must also be using folks that they pay. That just must be happening. And also probably technology, more character recognition technology. So that was a good digression. But this is an example of how we're using a footnote to link a specific claim about this person, like arrived in Cambridge in 1640, goes to this footnote. See, and then this makes me depressed because the Passenger and Immigrations List Index is not a real source. So that's now this is a great example of kind of both sides of the issue in Ancestry. Sorry, on Wikitree. Married Anne Bullard about 1648 in Cambridge. 3. Marriages prior. Okay, yeah, okay. So I happen to know that New England marriages prior to 1700 refers to the Charles Almontory research that is considered to be pretty good. So that's better than was just made up. But when we see about 1648, I am here to tell you how we know that. The reason we know that is because the birth of their first known child was in April of 1649. And so what they're saying is not that they were married about 1648, but that they were married probably just like, at least before that. And maybe we're basing that also on their age, possibly. Although he's pretty old by that point. How old is she? Do we know? About 1625. So she's a good bit younger than he is. And yeah, see, much earlier than 1648 would be pretty young for her to be married. But he could have been married a lot before that. Because what we don't know is, did they have one or two children who died young or weren't recorded, right? Or both. So we can't rule all that stuff out. But yeah, okay, 1648 is a reasonable guess. That's a guess. It's not recorded. How do we know it was Anne Bullard? I think there's a way. I think we do know that. I think that's documented. I just don't remember how. Said to have died 1690. Okay. So they're actually referencing the source. According to the Genealogical History of New Hampshire, he was a builder and his death was caused by a fall in 1690. They're pretty old, though. Born 1617, he was a ripe old age when he fell off a scaffold. Okay. Does it? Your biography. Okay. Does it say that? Does it say? Yes, it does. He was a builder and his death was caused by a fall from. All right, that's what it says. Now, we don't know how this book knows, right? We don't know where that came from because this book doesn't cite its sources. So that's one of those some say kind of facts. But it's kind of neat. It adds color. Prominent American families. Interesting. Prominent American families. Justice Richard Dana. Yep. And this happens to be a guy that a moderate amount of stuff has actually been written about. Burial. Oh, find a grave. Okay, so he's got to find a grave. Again, we're going to be suspicious of that because, we're squinting at that pretty hard because this is also added by people. Interesting. Nope, this is telling us where they got the fact from. That's telling us it doesn't say he was a builder, but okay. So Samuel Sewall in his well-known diary. I'm not descended from that person, from Judge Samuel Sewall, so I didn't know that that was a thing. But one of the, especially in New England, it was really interesting how there were like people living in the towns in New England who were kind of busybodies and just kept a diary of like interesting stuff that happened in town today. And so, of course, they're going to talk about the gossip relating to their neighbors, and a lot of that becomes facts that go to our ancestors. So stuff like, yeah, there's a couple of different places where you get the data from a New England diary. That's kind of neat. I am curious, and so I'm going to actually dig into. Here's my new genealogy shelf. I put my new shelf up, and we have here. You can see I actually only have these books to here. I don't have that many books that I've bought hard copies of because so many of them are available online. But I do have this book. This one's not available online. It is fairly recent. When was this written? It is fantastic. 2015. This book is amazing for if you have descent from the New England Puritan Great Migration families. This book is the stuff. Because, let's go here. Great Migration. I want to see if I can find the Great Migration website. There are a bunch of other books. Nope, that's not the one. Okay, fine. Anderson, Great Migration Study Project. Great Migration Study Project. It has a website. Sorry, whining now. Great Migration Study Project. There it is. I think. Okay, fine. Yeah, this is fine. It also has its own website. But here, all right. There's been a whole bunch of books written by, I mentioned in one of the early streams, Robert Charles Anderson is considered like just really, really well regarded in terms of his methodology and his diligence. And he has been the director of this thing called the Great Migration Study Project, which is to try to pull together everything that can possibly be found about anybody who was anybody of European descent who was in New England at the time of the Great Migration. So they're setting the date there as 1620 to 1640. Some other sources will say that the Great Migration kind of continued on to 1650, but what they're defining it as this time when there was a big upsurge in migration and then it kind of tailed off. Coincides with historical events back in England, like the Civil War that happened, and like things that were not favorable to Puritans. So they were kind of fleeing conditions that were not ideal for them. Anyhow, between this time, the original work that was written in the 90s, I want to say, was between 1620, which is the Mayflower, through 1633, and it's a huge set. I don't own the physical copies of those books because they're available online with a membership of the New England Historic and Genealogical Society, which I have. You can also read them in libraries. They're just not searchable for free online. But if you go to a library, most places have them. A lot of major libraries will have that set of books, so you can check those out. And so this is a huge volume with a lot of stuff in it, but it only goes up as far as 1633. And then they did another huge 7 volumes to cover just 2 years of migration, 34 to 35. The Puritan Great Migration is considered to have continued, as you saw, to at least 1640, maybe a little bit beyond that, depending on how you define it. And they've basically just like, because it grew, the number of people as the years go on, the number of people that there are to cover just keeps growing. And so they haven't written the definitive books with the definitive profiles of all of the people from 1635 to 1640. But and you will note here in Richard Dana's biography that it says he arrived in 1640. So if he did, if that's anywhere close to true, he's still outside He's right on the edge or maybe outside of the time frame covered by this, but he's definitely not covered in this because he wasn't there in 1635. Enter now this awesome book, because this book, what they did that is so freaking clever is that they went through and said, we haven't taken the time to exhaustively research all the people from 1635 to 1640. However, it seems like the least we could do is give you a list of the names that we know. And, because they're nice, places where you might go to read more about those people. So if you have a Puritan, a New England European ancestor who may have migrated before 1640, you first want to look in those big books, because if they're in the big book, you're going to get a very detailed profile with a lot of data about them, all the documents, all their spouses and children. There's a lot more stuff. But if they fall into you think they're in that time period, but they're not in those two volumes of big books, total of 10 books, you can look them up in this one. Or if you think they came a little bit later, we can look them up in this one. And I don't actually remember if Richard Dana is in this book. So, looking him up. Looking. And the answer is, he is not in this book. Okay. We have James Dane, John Dane, Thomas Dane. It goes into Danforth. So we don't have Dana. I am actually going to go check an alternate spelling, because he sometimes used the spelling Donnie. And if that's what was in the records, that might be what was in this book. He's also not in here as that. Okay. So I suspect not in here, which means that arrived in 1640 is probably a guess, right? Or it may be 1641, 1642. So it's kind of a thereabouts, which fine, no problem, no problem. So what we know then, if we wanted to get really tight on what we know, we probably can say with confidence, because we do have a birth record, right? We have a Cambridge, Massachusetts birth record showing Richard Dana as the father of John Dana, who was born 1649, is that we can reasonably assume that Richard Dana was in Cambridge in 1649. And if there's no documentation saying that he was there any earlier, he's not going to be in this book, because Robert Charles Anderson doesn't play like that. He's not going to say, we kind of think he was there soon. You'll see that a lot for your original immigrant ancestors. If they came far enough back that documentation is an issue. The problem with Puritan Great Migration is that there were some ships that kept passenger records, but they didn't all, and not all those records survive. It was very loosely done. And so it kind of was, people could just kind of hop on a boat and get over here. And I think not all the ship journeys are documented. So there's a lot of people who we know they must have arrived at this time, because we find a record of them in the town in 1636, and they own land. And so they must have been there for long enough to have gotten settled and owned some land. But oftentimes we don't have that exact thing. Is what it is. So Richard Dana is a great example of someone who falls right on that border, and we don't have exactly when he was there. And so if the earliest actual record that's actually known for him is 1649, then Anderson's not going to profile him as part of the Great Migration, because Anderson considers that to have ended in 1640. Fine, great. So, but this has been a little bit of a journey through what you can do on Wikitree. I'm going to show you real quickly. Yes, I don't own this profile, but I can actually do edits to it, because it's a shared tree that anyone can edit. If I really screw it up, there are people that are going to take a look at it, and hopefully, other projects are looking at it. Also worth mentioning, Richard Dana, let me go back. Oh, he's not project protected. Okay, well, that's fine. There are profiles in here that are protected, meaning that there are certain types of edits that you cannot make without the project's permission. And that will happen when you're looking at, in particular, profiles that tend to have the same error added to it over and over again. My ancestor Hammond, whose parents turned out to be bogus, his profile is protected to make sure that people will quit adding those bogus parents back on, because they're going to read that book exactly like I did, and they're going to think for years, maybe like I did, that those parents are real until you go in and do the research and find that they're not real. And so somebody coming along who absolutely means well and even has a source is going to say, I want to go add William and Elizabeth as parents of this guy. And the site is going to say, there is more recent research that you don't know about that says that those aren't correct. And so it's going to prevent them from doing that. This guy does not have project protection because he's not super disputed, which is great. So if I go in here, this is where I also struggle a little bit with Wiki Tree. I mentioned I was an editor on Wikipedia. I know a little bit about how to work with wiki syntax and how to edit a Wikipedia page. I also work in tech and I have created websites. I know HTML and CSS. So the stuff that you do to format a biography and make the footnotes work and stuff makes the profile really, really hard to edit. Once it's been published, it's very easy to read if you formatted it correctly. But when you're in here trying to edit, it's really, really difficult to see. And they actually have added, I'll give them this credit, they have added this enhanced editor that allows, now you can, it's actually a lot easier for me to see. Here's a category, there's some tags. The stuff that doesn't have a background is the text that actually shows up in the page. I'm going to do one quick fix here, because when you do a footnote, you want it on the outside of the punctuation. So I just moved the period. Tiny little thing. Yes, that's the kind of editor I am. Very sorry. And so now I can see, okay, this gray part here is going to be the footnote. If I wanted to make that footnote into a link to that source, I could. That would be a lovely thing to do. I just don't remember where that source is. This one, I don't know where the source is. That one, that's just not real. But I'm not going to take it out. I'm going to leave it alone. That being not real is like my opinion, right? I'm trying to be a good neighbor here, is what I'm saying. We've got yeah, okay, all right. Yeah. Said to have died April 2nd. Why isn't that capitalized? In Cambridge, Massachusetts. Citing Find a Grave. But according to, genealogical, that should be italicized. Genealogical History of New Hampshire. And if I scroll, sorry, so I've got New Hampshire here. If I scroll up to the top, there's a button to italicize. And all it's doing is it's adding, it happens to be that 2 single quotes around it is going to cause it to be italicized. I actually want the comma to be inside the italics, so I'm going to do that. Yes, that's the kind of person, that's how I am. His death was caused by a fall from a scaffold. And that does go there. There actually was, remember, we found there was a real source. There was a source for that. Wildly enough, there was a source for that. The book didn't say what the source was, but the source was from that dude's diary. Great, go us. We're also going to make that in the reference be italicized, because that's what you do to book titles. And you see how this is kind of not super friendly, right? It's just not. You would have to know, like, we've got this ref tag here, which I recognize, that's HTML, but then this is wiki syntax, and then the double brackets is wiki syntax. Single bracket is, double brackets is to a page elsewhere on this wiki. Single brackets is to a page out on the web. And then we have the sources are here. References are here. Yeah, okay. References are here. Fine. That's how that is. But my point being, this is hard to work with. I think I know my way around wiki syntax, and I still, if I'm writing something that has any volume of text to it, I will pull out into a Google Doc or Notepad or some other kind of editor where I can actually see this stuff better, and paste it in rather than try to just type it in here, because you get a very complex profile and it can be really hard to work with. Basic formatting. So I'm going to just say formatting, save changes. By the way, you will notice here there's a prompt for the pre-1700 requirement. I am coordinating with a project. I'm a member of the PGM project. I am familiar with the style rules for pre-1700 profiles. So this is saying as we get back before 1700 into the 1600s, let's go here. There's two things that happen. One is kind of the way that you work with data is different when it's an older profile. But the second thing is that as we get back to this age of person, the number of individuals on Wikitree who share my descent from Richard Dana is a lot. I'm sharing this with a lot of potential cousins. And so understanding how to work with and make sure this profile stays accurate, but also how to be a good collaborator on Wikitree is really, really important. And so they have a little process that they want you to go through to read a little bit, and you take a little quiz to get certified to edit profiles prior to 1700. There's another layer of profiles before 1500, because that research is much tougher, and I do very, very little of that. I do almost none of that. And something that we have to be mindful of when we're working on these shared trees is, and I give Wikitree a lot of credit for this, because when I first started doing my research, and I was used to working on my own tree, and I've said to the point of being utterly tiresome that I am a stickler for if I don't think a fact is proven, I will tend to throw it out or set it aside, and I'm kind of a grouch about it. And I got used to doing that because that tree belongs to me. That's my realm. I can have that standard if I want that standard. When I get out here onto a shared tree, I don't love the fact that everybody has looser standards than me. I don't really enjoy that. And I've gotten into some arguments with people on Wikitree who they're really just certain that this 1640 fact is proven, even though it's absolutely not. And they're certain that that source that it came from must be a good source, even though it's just not. Like, objectively, that's just not true. Those aren't standards of evidence. But a lot of family researchers are not, I'm not a, accredited historian. I don't have a degree in this kind of stuff. I'm just really pedantic. But a lot of folks are not trying to become archivists, and they just want to know who their family is. And so on a shared tree, it can become difficult, I think, to be crossing paths with people whose standards of evidence are looser than mine. But it's also hard for them to cross paths with somebody like me, who says you have to become an expert at looking at archival English baptism records and reading the handwriting, and you have to be able to prove that this one is that same guy. Like, a lot of that stuff is difficult. Wikitree, I wonder if I can find where that is. I wonder if I can find the page there. Find the kind of introduction to Wikitree, because they have some really lovely standards around collaborating, right? So here's, this is kind of their philosophy of being a collaborative tree. One family, other trees. Yes, so other single family trees. Okay. How are conflicts resolved? And okay. Yep. They have some really nice guidelines for dealing with people that we don't see eye to eye with, who have different standards of evidence, who disagree about a point of evidence of a shared family member, or just, as I've said, I contribute to profiles that I'm not related to, and so forth. And they have, I don't know, I feel like it's actually kind of helped me as a human to be, all right, personal privacy, is it an emergency? So this is great. They're saying if you have a problem with someone who is participating in Wikitree, the first question, there's this lovely decision tree. Are they causing harm? Are they really just spammers? Are they vandalizing profiles? That kind of stuff, which doesn't happen a whole lot on Wikitree, I don't think. Nowhere near as much as on Wikipedia, where it happens all the time, right? And so there are avenues to go through if there's actually somebody who's just posting spam or garbage. Privacy is important. Violating privacy is important. Takedown requests are important. So that's part of the decision tree. And it's saying these are the things that we objectively agree as a community are important, and that if someone is doing those things, it's not okay, we'll stop. Then the question, then this becomes a really interesting question. Is it an emergency? Is this an emergency? Is it going on right now? Will it be hard to fix later? If somebody writes something in to Richard Dana's profile that says he came to Cambridge in 1640, and I don't think that's true, that's not hard to fix. That's easy to fix because it's just text typed in the bio. It's not a big deal. The edits are fine. If I go in and you will notice I didn't delete that thing. If they put in something that I consider to be a bogus source, I didn't delete it. Didn't do anything there. Again, because I'll come back to why. I'll come back to why that is. It's specifying here, there's a couple of things that are hard to fix, that they take a little bit more seriously, more urgently, because they're just expensive to clean up later. But if it's something like somebody's created a duplicate, and I don't think they should have, I think they should merge it. And on Wikitree, you have to have various parties have to agree to the merge before it goes forward. And I've had some really frustrating encounters where I've proposed a merge, and the people on the other end said, I don't like your evidence, right? I'm like, oh, I don't want to have to go through it. Like, I want to merge this. Once I merge this, we'll just agree on the facts in profile number 2, and profile number 1 will go away. And people will say, we need you to fix up profile number 1 and make sure they actually match and put your sources. And that's how we know they're the same. Oh, and I've been so frustrated by that. But it is right, because a merge that shouldn't be done is really difficult to undo. But a merge that isn't done now and might be done 6 months from now, that doesn't actually hurt me. It's just annoying. But other stuff like I don't agree about that source and that evidence about arriving in 1640, we can fix that. We can fix it later. It's been hundreds and hundreds of years. We have a lot more time to be able to fix it, right? Has this person's behavior upset you? They've said, just walk away. Don't start fights. And that's been really good life advice for me. After you come back, are you still mad? They've got all kinds of stuff about trying to just like dial it down. Finally, does the person have good intentions? Now we're starting to get into why do I not just go delete that fact? I talked about that a little bit when I talked about the Hammond parents, right? That I say are bogus. A person coming in who thinks that dude's parents were William and Elizabeth of London has 2 books and a whole bunch of articles in the New England Journal that say that his parents were William and Elizabeth. It's not their fault. Those are actually sources I believed for many years. They happen to have been wrong because they had bad data. But a person who comes in and feels very strongly that William of London existed and is our ancestor has very good reason to think that. Not just good intentions, but like really good reason. And so it's on me to do the work to kind of talk them down and say, let me explain to you why. Did you see that? Did you find it here? Yes. Did you see it here? Did you see it on somebody's tree? Let me show you where that probably came from. Let me tell you why I think it's wrong. All right, let me take the time. So can I assume a person who believes that and I disagree with them has good intentions? Heck yeah. way beyond good intentions, right? Good intentions and what I would normally consider to be evidence. Good for them. So, can you give a person the benefit of the doubt? Can you contact them and try to work it out directly? Don't Wikitree while angry. Yes, that's true. It's so true. And finally, can you correct their mistakes delicately and courtesy? Right? There are times when Wikitree does this a lot more than I personally want to. I just want the facts to be fixed because they're facts. And there are times when there are stubborn people on Wikitree that drive me nuts. I don't spend enough time on Family Search for that to be an issue. I would imagine the same thing is going to happen over on Family Search when we have facts that are in conflict with each other. Right? Wikitree, we run into this, and especially because in the Puritan Great Migration, there are literally hundreds of thousands of descendants of any one person, potentially, right? There's a lot of potential descendants of that person. And so we're all independently doing our research and coming together on this one profile. And it's often the case that information can be bad or questionable or whatever. Let's go. I wonder if I can go look at. Sorry, delicately. Let me finish my thought on delicately. I have a habit on Wikitree. If I see a fact that I think is bogus, like the claim that he was in Cambridge that he came to Cambridge in 1640, and it cites a bogus source, what I would want to do, and I may or may not have time and decide to go do it for this profile, but what I would want to do is I would want to grab my book and first of all see, can I keep the 1640 fact and add a proper source? Can I find a source that is more reliable than the one they cited and say, somebody else said it was 1640. Great. I can put in a proper source and we can all be done, right? I'll add that as a footnote. The other option that I might have is, if 1640 is just straight made up, because it might be, what I want to go do is I want to go find out, what can we document about when Richard Dana arrived? Let's go back to Richard Dana now, because we've looked at this whole page. What do we know about when he arrived in Massachusetts? We know he ended up in Cambridge because that's where his children were born. They are, I think, making an assumption. I don't think there's evidence that he married her in Cambridge, but he lived in Cambridge, so it's a decent assumption. We don't actually know that he married her after he got here. He might have married her back in England and come later. Like, these things may all have happened. My recollection is that from my previous research, my recollection is that this may be legit, that may actually be his parent, and that his wife, Anne Bullard, is also pretty well documented. And so we may find, what's our source for this one? Same source. Okay. So I'm wondering, can I find something better for both of those, right? The 1640 thing, I think, is presented as if it's a fact, but I don't think it is. And 1648 is presented as if it's a fact rather than a guess. So what I might do, something I commonly do actually, is that I might go in and say, Richard Dana and Anne Bullard, their first child was born in 1649. Therefore, they were probably married around 1648. They lived in Cambridge. And then I would leave the rest of it alone. So all I'm doing is I'm slightly rewording to indicate what we know and what we don't know. We don't actually know that they were married in 1648 unless we find a marriage record. I would go look and see if we can find one. If I can find it, I'll add it. Then we know, right? Might even have the real date. I would then maybe reword that sentence to more accurately describe what we know and what we don't. And oftentimes the way I do it, honestly, a normal person will go through and read that second sentence and go, same thing. I don't see a difference, which is great because then they're not mad that I reworded it. Right? So I'll be precise about what we know. With something like arrived Cambridge 1640, I'm curious to know, I'm going to be curious about, why do we think that? Oftentimes with Puritan Great Migration, we may have that he was admitted to church membership, or that he had land, or that he was granted freeman status, or something else that was, or was was appointed to the local militia or something like that, right? Was appointed on the list of men who were allowed to bear arms in the town for the defense of the town or whatever. All of those are things that could be in other records somewhere else that have a date. And so what we try to do for that migration time frame is that we try to go back and find what is the earliest evidence we have that actually links him to presumably Cambridge. And we say he was in Cambridge by 1642 when he was listed on, when he was part of the local militia. Link to source. And then I can replace 1640 with something that's more precise, because we don't actually know that he came in 1640. He may or may not have, but we can describe it. And this sentence tells me that his land here, south side of the Charles River in Cambridge. Okay, so there's probably a source relating to that I could go find and link to. But I'm not just going to go delete a sketchy fact unless I have a better quality fact to replace it with. What tends to happen on Wikitree is Wikitree abhors a vacuum. And so if you have nothing in there, somebody's just going to come along and put 1640 back in, because they're saying, oh, well, my tree says he arrived in 1640. It uses this sketchy source. Right? So I got in the habit on Wikitree of not necessarily deleting a thing unless I can replace it with something. And that would either be a better fact with documentation, or I might have to go write a paragraph that says, and here's why we don't know when he came over. But I want to put it in there so that if another cousin comes along and says, why don't they have this thing? My thing says he came in 1640. I want to explain. If it's not in there, I want a paragraph that says, we don't actually know that he came in 1640 because reasons. And that, to me, is that is my way of being courteous. I am aware that not everybody is going to love that or find it courteous, but my way of being respectful is saying, I'm not just going to go delete the stuff that you put in and said, no, you don't know, right? That's mean. I would love, if I were going to overhaul this profile, I would clean up these references and make them easier to read. But I'm so glad they're in there, right? That's low on my priority list, honestly, very low. I would add other sources that have a little bit more definitive. And I am really curious about the fact that a baptism exists for someone named Richard Dana doesn't tell us anything about it being our Richard Dana. I would want more, and the specifics that I would want are, if we had a death record for Richard where it said his age at his time of death and his age tracked to a birth date in 1617, I would like that better. One of the big things that European descendants of these European migrants often get wrong is that we have a habit of looking back into our home country and finding anybody who has the same name as our ancestor, and that must be our ancestor in their home country, which assumes that we have any idea how common that name was, or how many people by that name might have existed. I don't actually know how common the surname Dana was. It's not super common in the US, but sometimes those surnames are more common back in England. I don't know how many Richard Danas there were. This is roughly the right age. He didn't have a son named Robert. I don't know if his father was named Robert. How do I know any of these things? And so I want to go find out, yes, a baptism existed for a person named Richard Dana. I'm going to want in my research to know, what evidence do we have that Richard Dana is the same as the Richard Dana who had children born in Cambridge? How do we know that those are the same person? Remember that in Anderson's Standards of Genealogical Research, we looked at that book a while back, it's on the shelf. They said what we're trying to do is to prove that a person described that this fact describes the same person as this other fact. These two facts are talking about the same person. We don't actually know that here. We just know that this is a fact about a Richard Dana. So that would be a place I would dig in and do more research. Anyway, so hey, we're getting close to the end of stream time. Good for us. We made it. What we have focused on today, not a lot of very detailed research, right? I don't even have the Danas in the Ancestry tree that we started to build together. But what we were trying to do here was just do a nice survey of what are some free alternatives to the work that we had started to do on Ancestry that is probably going to be too painful to do on Ancestry going forward. We have this beginning of this family tree here on Ancestry. We have run out of free trial time. Do we want to try to do that research on Family Search? If we do, we're going to be working in a shared family tree, which is not a bad thing. We could be able to take advantage of research that other people have already done on some of these families. It is, I would say, it's got more features, but it's not quite as usable. I like the merge capability, but I love being able to connect records. The record experience is not quite as smooth as the paid Ancestry experience, right? The records are harder to find. It's harder to get into the originals that they're transcribed from. It doesn't differentiate the ones that we're already, well, it's harder to see. It's not impossible, but it is harder to see the ones we're already using compared to the ones we didn't have yet. We can't really filter those out easily. They do have hints. The hints are not quite as aggressive as the hints on Ancestry. So it's not bad. And the tree view is also not bad. I haven't used it a ton. And it does actually have some of these pop-ups that are going to alert us to places that we may want to take our research. So here's Antipastibula. Spoiler alert, I added most of these people. Well, I added like this generation, and then you get up into this generation and you start to find that other people have already put them in. This is going to take us, I am actually curious if they have the bogus parents. Do they have the bogus parents? I bet you do. Oh, they do. They have the bogus parents. Okay, well, that could be fun. I don't know what the etiquette is for, like, getting rid of bogus parents on Family Search. I know how to do it on Wikitree. I've done it. So that'll be interesting. So here's the Family Search experience. You know, it's a little painful. Hurts a little bit. I'm missing a lot here. I wonder if this is because we don't have all their children, or if it's because this view doesn't show us all their children. I might not have added all the siblings, but maybe somebody else did. Phew, so we have all this. Then the other thing we did was we looked on here on Wikitree. So let's take a look at Eugene, look at his family tree here. There is a dynamic tree view. It's a little sketch. I mean, it's not a great experience. If I hover, does that work? No, it doesn't work. If I come back here, I can at least hover over them and get a little bit more information about them, which I like. Right? And researching, so the other major thing to talk about on Wikitree is Wikitree does not have, other than those little one-offy pages that describe books and where to find the books, it doesn't have anything about sources. Wikitree doesn't maintain any of its own sources. So if we're talking about filling out the sources in a profile like we did, let's say for Emily here, all of that is stuff that I am bringing in from having found it someplace else. Family Search or Ancestry or some other kind of research. This doesn't, there is no search, there's no finding other records, right? You're not going to, the only way you're using Wikitree for research is if you're looking for other people who've already researched your family and you're trying to connect your people up to them. The super special guest that we'll have on the stream in the next month or so, probably, is someone who found me and this family on Wikitree, and we want to know, hey, we think we might be connected. And we're going to do some exploring together to figure out whether that is true. Spoiler alert. I suspect. Nope, I'm not going to do. Nope, not going to spoil it. Not going to spoil it. Anyway, so Wikitree, really good for connecting with people, good for connecting with cousins, good for connecting with projects. And if you want to improve your skill at not just genealogy in general, but even like particular types of research in particular communities, Wikitree is fantastic for that, right? Because if you have a few relatives in New Sweden and you have no idea what kind of records exist in New Sweden or how to read them, or what to even look for, you can connect with the New Sweden project on Wikitree and learn a ton from the way other people have researched other ancestors that you may not be related to, but they might be like your ancestors' neighbors or something. So it's fantastic for that. It is terrible for finding sources. So it seems like sort of the best halfway point, right? The best thing that kind of does a little bit of both. It's as close as you're going to get to the interface that Ancestry has for trees. It is a shared tree where you can theoretically connect with cousins. I think there's fewer people here doing that. There's not so much of the active research projects, although there kind of might be. So family search is kind of that like splits the difference option, right? It is community based. It is shared trees, find cousins. It does have records. They are harder to search. And it does have a place to put your research. And as I whined about earlier, you can connect a specific source to a specific fact about that person so that you know where that fact came from and how you know that fact to be accurate. So that's cool. Wiki Tree, better for writing stories about your ancestors, better for sharing. And the place that for the kind of research, like the crank it out, build a tree, add people, research the facts about them, Ancestry is just still clearly the best. It's got the best, and the hints, although a lot of the hints are bogus, and the further back you go, the worse the hints get. But there's a lot here, right? So that's been our survey of kind of our alternate sources that we may use. And I'm really debating, right, as we wrap up the stream for today. I'm seriously considering. Well, okay, folks in the chat. Oh, hey, professional. Yeah. Of course you can send me a message from Wikitree. Of course you can. Please, any other way you want. I'm also on Twitter at BasketCase. Sorry, I don't know how long your message has been sitting there. It's all the way over there now. Yes, of course, I would love to look at your question. We can even do it on the stream here sometime if you want. But yeah, let's chat. Send me a message on Twitter or on Ancestry or on Wikitree or wherever you can find me. And if you can't find me, leave me a message in the chat here and we'll try to figure out how to connect. Yes. I would love to help with other people's research. What I am considering is possibly one of two things. Either going ahead and getting the low-level US membership on Ancestry to do the stream with, so that we can continue to see the basics of those records and attach them to the tree. I might do that. The other thing I might do, since I already have a fully paid membership, is I might move this tree over to my regular Ancestry account, keeping this tree separate, one, so that we can build it together, and two, so that it doesn't include all of my private living people and all of their details that I don't want to show on the stream. So I could do one of those two things and go back to using a paid Ancestry account on the stream. If you have a thought, if you're watching this video on demand, you can still leave a chat. You're welcome to do that. But if you're in the chat and you have a thought about that, about what you would like to see, what has been the most useful for you? Because if digging around on family search is useful and helping you understand how to do what you want to do, we can absolutely do that. Or if watching me build the Hammond tree on Ancestry the way I like to do it, if that's really useful, it would be fine to roll that in under a paid membership and do it that way if that's helpful. If it's not helpful, if the other stuff is more useful, then I don't need to waste a lot of time and resources moving it there. So I am really interested to know viewer thoughts on that. Again, if you're watching it as video on demand later, you can still leave stuff in the chat for the video. I will find a way to see that. Do feel free. You noticed that I'm on Wikitree. You are welcome to look me up, and you are welcome to send me messages through there. I am on my other account on Ancestry is the one you should send messages to. You'll see it as Cheryl M. Hammond. So feel free to find me on any of those mediums, or follow me on Twitter, direct message on Twitter, or just at me on Twitter, and I'll see that. Any of those is a perfectly good way to get a hold of me. Some of you already know me from Facebook, and you're welcome to. Actually, my profile's public over there too. So any of those mechanisms. I suppose I could create an email for the stream if that becomes a thing. But yeah, happy to do lookups for folks too. And still open to the idea of taking one of your trees and building out a tree with you on the stream. So as a viewer, if that's something that you're interested in, that's something that I'd like to explore. Maybe doing here with this Hammond tree, we're doing research that most of it is stuff I already know. Most of it is stuff I've found from other sources. So we're sort of playing on easy mode in that respect. I'm very interested in doing new research on a new tree where we're finding the whole thing out together and making decisions about what we like together. So, yeah, so that kind of wraps up today's stream. I did want to also end on a programming note. I had been streaming twice a week on Sundays and Wednesdays. I think I'm going to take a break from the Wednesday streams. We don't get, I mean, we have a small but loyal number of viewers. Yep, small but loyal number of viewers here on Sundays. You all are awesome. Thank you for joining. We haven't had the same viewership on Wednesdays. I don't know if that's because I'm not promoting it hard enough, because I'm not, or if that's just a bad time for people. But it's not a great time for me. It's an okay time for me. Anyway, so I'm likely to drop down to once a week for a little while until I kind of make decisions about when I might want to do a second weekly stream, what time works, how hard do I want to promote it to try to get people watching. That's another thing that if you have opinions about, you are most welcome. Please share your thoughts on that in the chat or through other means. So let me know what kind of timing would work for you. If that Wednesday thing didn't work the way I had it scheduled and some other time during the week would work, I'm up for it, especially if we're going to be doing research together. So let me know. So hello, hey, cousin Kristen, woo. So, yep. Oh yeah, no, Kristen. See, now you've seen it. Anybody can edit Wikitree, so you can go add those profiles for your family. Which I think is really powerful. And the ones for family members that are either still living or are more recent, if you create those profiles, they will be private to just you. And they'll be limited in the information that they show out to the public. Tell you what, I'll show you what that looks like because I'll log out. And I'll show you. All right, if we go back to, she's fairly open because she died long enough ago. But as we work our way down in the tree, and this one is fairly open because he died long enough ago, we get to Harry. Boom. So here's my grandfather, Harry. I own this profile. He died pretty recently. And you'll notice that you can see the names of his children who have passed away, but the children that are living are listed as private. I can see those when I'm logged in as myself because I own those profiles. And here's see, I haven't done anything with this poor guy's biography. He had this super colorful life. This is where, Aunt Pam, if you're watching, this would be the place to go and write your dad's biography in here. Even better to write it yourself than to tell me and have me write it. Like, let's go. Let's get that written in there. Right? And then we've got, oh, we don't even have, it doesn't show his spouse. That's okay. If we go here, do we get his mother? Yes. right? So here's my grandmother, and she's also passed away, but recently. So it's very limited in terms of what it shows here. She also needs a proper biography written, and I'm really hoping that some of my family members will put in their like memories of her and stuff, because that way we could have this whole full lovely thing that people could read. If there were a biography written, it would be visible here, but the private details are hidden. So if you're adding stuff for your family, you can be fairly assured that Wikitree's done a pretty decent job of maintaining the privacy of the people that you add. And then that way you can go back as you go further back in history, more stuff opens up as we look at people that died longer ago. You can go see what all the levels are and what they mean, but that's kind of the point, is that that's how that works. And because, again, we're trying to create this one shared tree, you end up being able to go find, yeah, see, she connects into all these other people that she was married to. It's kind of sad that I wrote a better biography for her than I did for my own relatives, but it's because there's so much more to say about my own relatives. This one is just done, right? Anyway. Oh, I didn't link him properly, but like here's my grandmother's half brother, and he's got a little data in it here. They do have this search box here that pops up if you're using Wikitree, but it's not really like, it's, you know, it's not a place that you go to do your original research mostly, until you get way further back. So yeah, definitely encourage, if you have family members that you think should be on Wikitree, you should add them. It's fun. I do occasionally get people contacting me and saying, hey, can you add this fact to this person whose profile you manage? I'm like, yes, and so can you. So anyway, pretty cool. Yeah, I think I can imagine us spending more time on Wikitree, and showing more of what you can do with it, and maybe working with more folks from the community. I think it really is an amazing resource. It's not the place I go to do the primary research, right, to build the tree in the first place. It's where I go when I have an idea of what I think the tree is, and I want to start proving it out or filling it out and seeing what other sources are out there, and like doing that more. But it varies. It depends on what branch of my own tree I'm in. So with that, most likely going to be going to Sundays only for the foreseeable future. If you have a thought about a second time during the week that you would be interested, especially if you're watching the video on demand and you're not able to make it to the normal Sunday time, I would love to hear about a time that you would be interested in making it to the stream. Because I like the idea of streaming twice a week. I just haven't dialed in on the time that works the best. And next Sunday we'll be here, and in between times, I'm going to be working a little bit on the tech to see if I can get my mystery possible maybe cousin to join us on the stream, and we'll talk together about, she's done some amazing research on her family, and whether we can connect it up to the research that I've done on mine. So with that, thank you so much for joining us on this Sunday. Hope you have a great weekend and a great day, and I will see you next week.